Hey there, and welcome to From the Ground Up show, where we inspire and encourage the next generation of blue-collar leaders by telling the stories of those that have been there, done that, and in many cases are still doing it. So today we're honored to have Dylan McCabe. He is the co-founder and owner of Limitless Roofing Group, which is a national group purchasing organization for roofers. He's the father of 3 girls, a husband, and an entrepreneur. So welcome, Dylan. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, man.
Awesome. We just want to hear your story, kind of where you come from and how you got to where you are. So do you mind just telling us a little bit about kind of your background, starting with where you grew up, how you grew up, and how you got to where you are today?
Yeah. So I was actually born in Virginia in the Blue Ridge Mountains in a little town called Bedford, which nobody's heard of because it's so small. It's just a bunch of farmers and stuff. And we moved to Texas when I was 6, and I grew up in League City, Texas, which is kind of halfway in between Houston and Galveston, and raised like a lot of guys in a single parent home, a broken home, raised by my mom. And I had 2 older sisters. And we didn't have any kind of guide rails for life or moral compass or anything. So I got into all kinds of trouble later on growing up, and struggled a lot through school. I was in special ed all my life. And, it's just hard when you got a mom that works 2, sometimes 3 jobs just to provide. And I mean, man, I barely made it out of high school, and then just kind of did different things, man. I mean, just worked out a lot. That was either at the gym or, at a club. I mean, that was kind of my life. So not really going anywhere. And then, God really broke through my life, and I became a Christian. That's a longer story, but I went from being a pretty passionate skeptic to a passionate Christian, and started telling everybody about Jesus. And then went to Bible college, got into prison ministry, started talking to Aryan Brotherhood members and Mexican Mafia members and stuff like that about God, and having really interesting conversations. And then moved up to Dallas to go to Dallas Theological Seminary. And then while I was at Dallas Seminary, God started doing some things in my heart and in my life, and just kind of led me into the world of entrepreneurship, and met some Christian entrepreneurs. And that was a real turning point, because I thought I'd be preaching for the rest of my life. And it's funny how God has different plans. You have one way you think your life will go, and God has just completely different plans. And so I've tried a lot of different things over the years, from vending machine business to chemical supplies to lots of stuff, and got into the roofing industry 4 years ago. And we started a mastermind group called the Limitless CEO Group. And we started just bringing roofing owners together to share best practices and learn business systems. And I started asking these guys, where are the buying groups in roofing? Because I was in healthcare before getting into roofing. Like I said, I've done a lot of things over the years. But I was in healthcare for 2 years in sales, and called on these big buying groups called GPOs, or group purchasing organizations. And so when I got into roofing, I started asking, where are the GPOs in roofing? And everybody's like, what are you talking about? And I'm like, a buying group. And people are like, what do you mean? Like buying other roofing companies? And I'm like, no, hundreds or thousands of us coming together to negotiate group purchasing discounts. And so everybody that I talked to about it said, no, I've never been a part of anything like that. And so basically we came back with, well, if we started a group like that, would you join? And everybody said, well, yeah, why wouldn't I? And that was kind of the birth of the idea of the Limitless Roofing Group.
Awesome. You said you barely made it out of high school, and then you spent some time in Bible college. Any other education in there? Did you finish a college degree or do any business education?
Yeah. So when I graduated high school, I went to a psychiatrist, because I thought, I've been in special ed all my life. I've always struggled with school. I've never wanted to do it. I've had teachers all my life telling me I had ADHD or whatever, but my mom would always come back, and I was a really big gamer, and I was one of the best. I mean, it didn't matter what game it was. And I'm not patting myself on the back. That's just what I went through as a teenager. I was one of the best. Yeah. And I mean, if it came to a first person shooter like Halo or whatever, it wasn't even close. I would just win all the time against everybody by a huge margin because I would play for 40 hours a week. So how do you compete with somebody like that who makes it their full-time job? So my mom would come back to teachers and to psychologists and say, yeah, but he can focus on something for hours at a time if he's interested in it. So I'm not putting him on any drugs. So I finally graduated high school barely. I actually tried my senior year because I thought, man, there's nothing worse than being held back your senior year. And I went to a psychiatrist and he took me through all kinds of testing, IQ tests, all kinds of stuff. And after all of that, it took weeks to go through all that. He said, look, man, he's like, I've got some good news and some bad news. I'm like, okay, if I'm not playing with a full deck of cards, just let me know. I don't care. I would like to know if there's a reason for why I've been a terrible student all my life and been slower than everybody, had more difficulty than everybody. He was like, look, man, your IQ is not low. And he's like, I don't know what it is because you didn't finish any portion of the IQ test. And he's like, it could be way above average, but we'll never know because you don't complete anything. He said, the moment you experience a little bit of difficulty, you give up. And he said, and that's the good news I've got. He's like, you have a severe case of negative self-talk. And he said, most kids learn how to work through that at a young age where they experience something difficult. And they're like, I can't do this. And they have a parent or a teacher or siblings that are around them that communicate the message, well, keep going. You're going to get it. Keep trying. Here's how you do it. Well, I grew up with a mom that she didn't even graduate high school. So she had a hard time helping me as well. And so I learned at a very young age, I can't do stuff and I just need to give up because it's not even worth trying. And so that carried me on into adulthood. Right. And so he was basically like, you need to switch that from, I can't do this, I'm done, to trying. Like when it's hard, keep trying. And you need to replace it with positive self-talk, some positive statements instead of just the head talk that you've trained yourself. It's not just it's what you actually believe now. You've practiced it so long. It's just who you are. And he said, I don't know what's going to happen to you if you find something you're interested in. And so he said, that's the other big problem is he's like, you just don't care. He said, you don't care if other kids are taking SATs and trying to get in colleges. You have no interest in that. Therefore, you don't care. Therefore, you're not even going to try. And that's true. I didn't take my SATs. I was like, I don't know if I want to go to college. And I don't care. Like I march to the beat of my own drum. I've always been like that. I don't care what the crowd is doing. I don't care what popular fashion is, what the popular song is. Like it bothers me, frankly, when everybody thinks the same. It's like, are you not thinking for yourself just a little bit, So I was extreme with that. And it caused me some problems, right? So I was about 18 when I met with him, still kept living just kind of a narcissistic lifestyle, gym, partying, just that kind of stuff, everything that goes along with that. And then had a radical conversion experience to Christ and then went to Bible college and graduated. So the way I went to Bible college is a God story too. I was approached by a guy that was a wealthy donor to a ministry. And the way I got saved was God did some really big things, but he did 4 big things really. I met a guy at the gym that I became good friends with, and he had something really special about him that nobody else that I knew had. And it was Jesus shining through him. Then I argued with him about Christianity. Yeah, I argued with him about Christianity at a place called Cafe Brazil in Houston about every 2 weeks, like clockwork, for almost 3 years. I tried to get him to leave his Christianity because I thought it was the stupidest worldview possible. And I was a little bit philosophical, and I just thought it was ridiculous. So at the end of 3 years, I thought, wow, I've never met anybody like this, and he has really good answers for all of my questions. And I don't have any answers. All I have is questions. And so I asked him for a great book on Christianity. I was like, give me the best book on Christianity you can. I want really good reasons for why you believe that it's true, not just what it teaches. And the next day he gave me Mere Christianity by C.S. Lewis. And I thought, man, I'm just going to poke all the holes in this book. This is just going to be full of contradictions. And the exact opposite happened. I mean, every page I read, I was like, wow, this really makes a lot of sense. And that was a miracle to me because prior to that, I would just rip ideas to pieces, and I loved it. I loved getting into those debates with people. And that was an experience. And then the final two things God did was we had a total stranger come over to mow our lawn. I had knee surgery because my knee was messed up. And it's in the middle of the summer in Houston. And this guy comes over and he's like in a good mood. He's happy. It's 100+ degrees outside. It's just weird. He's like, he's so happy and smiley. It's just weird. And I'm a total unbeliever, and I'm hanging out with kind of a rougher crowd. You know, there's violence, there's drugs, there's, you know, I'm just not the kind of guy that wants to be overly friendly with people. And I take him to the backyard, and then out of nowhere, he goes, "You know what, Dylan? God is telling me to talk to you about Jesus." And I mean, I'm just like, in my head, that's like you, Eric, saying, "Dylan, I got to tell you, this is going to sound crazy, but I got to tell you about my family. They've been living on Mars for the last 50 years. Like, it was that crazy. And something inside the normal me would have been like, dude, get the F out of my yard. Like, just go. But something told me to sit there and listen. I mean, it was intense. Like, I just knew I needed to be quiet and listen. And he asked me a question that I'd never heard before. I'd read about it as a concept, but nobody had ever just put it to me the way he did. And he said, "Dylan, do you have any idea how much God loves you? Do you have any clue about that?" And I was just like, man, no. And so the police had been called at our family Christmas 6 months prior because I physically attacked my brother-in-law. Like, that's the kind of person I was. So for him to start telling me about how much God loved me, and he just went on and on, like, God knew your name before you were even born. He had this conversation planned before you were born. He's got plans and good works for you that you don't even know about. He knows your name. He's got the hairs on your head all night. I mean, he just went on and on about how much God knew me and loved me. And he just started preaching, man. I mean, like, for like 30 minutes straight in my backyard. I mean, he had his hand waving. He had a smile on his face the whole time. He went through Jesus, the death, burial, and resurrection. He went through heaven and hell. He went through discipleship. I mean, he covered a ton of ground. And at the end of it all, he went to throw his arm around me. And he's like, "Come on, man, you can accept Jesus right now. Like, you can be saved today." And I'm just like, hold on, man. Like, you clearly believe this 100%. But I'm not there. And I'm not going to do this unless I'm 100% convinced that this is the truth. So he was like, "All right, you go inside, man. You go inside and you pray and you ask God to show you the truth." And I was like, okay. And he went on to mow the yard, and I went inside and I prayed. And I still remember the prayer because I'd only prayed a few times in my whole life before that. And I said, "God, I don't know who you are and I don't know what you are, but I know you're there." C.S. Lewis has convinced me of that. But I also know that there's all these different worldviews: atheism, Islam, Christianity, Hinduism, Buddhism, you name it. But they can't all be true. Whatever the truth is about you, it is that truth, and it is no other truth. 1 + 1 is 2. It's not 3. It's not 7. Like, that's objective truth, right? And so I said, "God, please show me the truth, because I don't want to believe a lie. Because if what that guy said out there is true, it sounds incredible, but I don't want to be deceived. So please show me the truth." And that was my prayer. And I just kind of went on about my business. Probably went back to playing Halo.
Oh, man.
So 2 weeks later, God did the fourth and final thing in my life that was just, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And I'm at this wedding. A buddy of mine from junior high had called me out of the blue. We were really close friends all throughout elementary and junior high. And then we had high school, and he went to the sports crowd, and I went to kind of the loser pothead party crowd. And we just kind of lost touch. He calls me out of the blue and says, "How you been doing, man?" And I'm like, "Chris, how's it going? Like, great to hear from you." And he said, "Well, I've got good news. I'm getting married." And in my head, I'm like, "Oh man, what a sucker. Like, you're going to have a ball and chain with one woman for the rest of your life. What a terrible decision, you know?" But of course I tell him, "Congrats, man. I'm happy for you." And he said, "Well, good. I was hoping you could be my best man." And I'm like, wow, okay. I mean, I hadn't talked to him in years. I'm like, man, I would love to. So to me, that was God's way of making sure I showed up. So I go to this wedding, and he's a Christian now. Chris had been a Christian for years. I guess he got converted at some point in high school. And it is
Did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
Okay.
And it's an overtly Christian wedding. Like the pastor, the guy officiating the wedding is just sharing the gospel the whole time, to the point to where I'm standing up there as a best man next to my buddy Chris. And I'm like, man, does anybody else think this is a little intense? Like, does he have to keep talking about God? Like, this is so just heavy, but to them, it was probably great. Yeah. So the couple gets married. I go to the reception, and there's a couple of hundred people there that I've never met before. And I'm just making my way through the crowd, talking to different people. And I meet this old man. And we get to talking, and he had something in his hands, and it looked like a coin collection or something, framed in a wooden frame with glass. And I said, "What is this?" And he said, "Well, this is my gift to the bride and groom. I'm the grandfather of the bride. This is one of the happiest days of my life." He said, "I'm so happy for Chris and Kelly that they got married today, and this represents the most important thing in life." And I'm like, "Well, I'm kind of a philosophical guy. What's the most important thing in life?" And he said, "Well, the one gold coin on top represents Jesus Christ, and the 12 gold coins underneath represent his 12 disciples." And I said, "Oh, that's interesting. I'm wrapping up a book on Christianity right now called Mere Christianity." And I'm thinking, I already know enough about Christianity. I'm already there. Like, it's cool. There's a lot of truth to it, but I'm not a believer, right? So just that arrogance of thinking, since I've studied something a little bit, I already know it.
Yeah.
And he looks at me and he goes, "You know what, young man? God is telling me to talk to you about Jesus." And I'm just like, wait a second. He used the exact phrase, word for word, that the Mexican lawn service guy used in my backyard a few weeks earlier. And I know they don't know each other. And I know that they're not going to churches where the leader is telling, all the people attending, "Hey, go around to total strangers and use this phrase in these exact words." So yeah. I knew something was happening. And I mean, I had tunnel vision on him. I lost sight of everybody else at the reception. It was like it was just the two of us. And he said, "Young man," he said, "I know God has plans for you, but you're not going to believe in him unless I share with you what happened to me." And he said, "I've only shared this with my family, direct family, and a few very close friends. I haven't shared it with very many people in my life. But I know God wants me to share this with you today." And I'm thinking, my gosh, what is this guy about to share with me?
Yeah.
And he said, "I've always believed in Jesus ever since I was a little boy. I had faithful parents that, taught me about Jesus and the good news." And he said, "I believed in him and followed him all my life, ever since I was a little boy. But about 40 years ago, and this was 25 years ago now, but when he was telling me this was back in 2002. And he said 40 years ago, he was driving down an old Texas road out in the middle of nowhere, and he was delivering some papers, hand delivering some papers. And this is before cell phones and stuff. So he's driving hours out in the middle of Texas, out in the middle of nowhere. And he's got the windows down, and the wind starts blowing these papers around that he'd been on the road for hours to deliver. And so he takes his eyes off the road and he goes to put his hand on the papers. And when he looks back at the road has started curving, and he's on a hill. And he jerks the wheel to get control of the car and completely loses control of the car. And he said he tried everything from turning the wheel, hitting the brakes, everything you can imagine, completely loses control of the car. It goes flying off the top of this hill, way down to the bottom. It smashes into the ground. He bursts through the windshield. He hits the ground, and he can't move. And the first thing he thought was, "Oh my God, I've broken my back," because he was alive, but he couldn't feel any pain and he couldn't move. Yeah. And he realizes he can move his shoulders. So he starts like inching his shoulders along the ground. And he's thinking to himself, if I can get up to the top of the hill, somebody at some point today maybe will drive by and see me. So he moves, does this for a little bit, and then he just passes out. Well, while he's laying there, a man and his little boy just happen to be driving down that same old Texas country road out in the middle of nowhere in a brand new car. And they start approaching that same area where the hill is, and the car starts to overheat. And they start climbing the hill, and steam starts coming out of the hood of the car. And they get to the top of the hill in the exact spot where this guy, his name was Lawrence Taff, where Mr. Taft's car flew off the road. This brand new car that this man and his son are driving just completely breaks down. And the guy doesn't know what's going on. It's a perfectly fine car. It's a new car. He gets out. He opens the hood. He can't figure out what's wrong with the car. He goes to try to restart it. It's completely dead now. Useless. Well, his little boy's like exploring, looking around, and while his dad's jacking with the car for like 45 minutes. And his little boy goes, Dad, there's something at the bottom of the hill. And he goes with his son, and they look down toward the bottom of the hill, and there's this crushed up car with this body laying next to it, just motionless. So they go down there, they grab him, they drag him up to the top of the hill. And the guy is thinking the same thing. Well, maybe at some point today, somebody will come by, but this guy's going to die on us. And the little boy looks at the dad and says, Dad, just try to start the car one more time. And the dad's thinking, why would I do that? Right?
Yeah.
So he gets in the car, puts the key in the ignition, turns the key, and the car starts right up. And they rush this guy to the nearest doctor's office, and they get him in there in the examination room, and the doctor comes in and he regains consciousness. And the doctor says, Mr. Taff, I'm not a religious man, but there is no medical explanation for you to be alive today. You should be dead. You should have lost X amount of blood. None of this makes any sense. And so I'm thinking, wow, this is amazing. And I told him that. I said, God worked a miracle in your life. That's amazing. And I've read enough of Mere Christianity to believe in a powerful God who can work miracles. Still don't know who he is, though. And he looks at me and he says, you know what, young man? He said, I didn't just pass out when I was laying next to my car. He said, I died. And he said, when he died, he rose above his body. He was about 10, 15 feet above his body. And he said he wasn't happy. He wasn't sad. He was just there. And he looked at his body kind of like, he said, like you've taken your clothes off for the day and you're going to put new clothes on and they've served their purpose and that's it. And he said, then everything around him turned dark, like pitch black dark. He said he saw the man and his son drag his body away and all that. As soon as that happened, everything around him turned dark, like a darker than you can imagine. And he began to wonder what's happening. You know, am I dead? Am I alive? Where am I? And he said, as soon as he could think the question, almost before the thought was even finished, the answer was there. And so he started thinking all these questions, and answers just started pouring in. So he had no misunderstanding and he had no fear because there was nothing that he didn't know. If he wanted to know it, it was there. And he began to be lifted away from his body, and way up above, there was this bright white light, like way up above, like in outer space. And he's lifted to it faster and faster. Like he said, the speed was just incredible. It's still the whole question and answer thing. And then he's set down in space somewhere on nothing. He's just standing there, and something speaks to him and says, walk to the light, Lawrence. Walk toward the light. So he starts walking toward the light, and still the whole question and answer. I mean, he's like asking about dinosaurs, aliens, anything you can imagine. He's just, what about this? What about that? And then he said he's walking, and at one point he noticed something off to his right, and he looked over and he said there was this massive, beautiful white gate. And he said, you knew right away when you saw it that no human architect could ever design anything this spectacular. He said it was just amazing how beautiful it was and massive it was. And he said there were all these people around it in front of it, and they were yelling to him, and they were like, Lawrence, we're here. And he said it was a joy that you can't understand. It's like the most amazing family reunion ever. And they were people that knew him, and some of them had been gone for generations. And he wanted to run to them, but something told him, not yet, Lawrence, walk to the light. So he keeps walking to the light, and he said the light got brighter and brighter. And he said it got so bright that he couldn't even look at it. I mean, he's like walking toward it with his hand over his face. He said it was brighter than the sun. Then he began to feel something coming off of the light. And he said it was so overwhelming that it drowned everything else out. And the people at the gate, the whole perfect knowledge experience that he was having with all the questions and answers, he said it just overwhelmed everything. And he said it was so intense that he almost couldn't stand it. Like he almost physically couldn't stand up. It almost brought him to his knees. And he asked me, do you know what I felt coming off of the light? And I'm thinking, my God, like, no, what did you feel? And he said, what I felt was love. And he said, I felt a love so tremendous that you you cannot even imagine it here on earth. You have no idea how immense it is and wonderful it is. He said, your own mother, take the most loving person that you know, that their love for you can't even come close to this. And he said the light started to dim and a man was walking toward him, and all of this love just pouring off of this man. And Lawrence said it was around him and inside of him. It was just all consuming. And the light dimmed even more, and he could see the man's face. And he said the man walking toward him was Jesus Christ. And he said Jesus came up to him and he grabbed his hands. And Lawrence said, I finally knew two things. He said, I knew two things right away. He said, I knew I was finally home, and I knew that I was in the presence of my Savior. And all he felt was love. And Jesus said, Lawrence, it's not yet your time. There's still many things I have for you to do. And boom, he was back in his body in the doctor's office. And that's when the doctor came in and said, Mr. Taff, I'm not a religious man, but there's no medical explanation for you to be alive. And so I was stunned when he shared all that stuff with me. I'd never heard a story like that in my life. Now on YouTube, there's channels that talk about this stuff. There's books like Imagine Heaven. I had never come across anything even close to this. And so I was kind of useless the rest of the night. I mean, I had a hard time talking to people. I was just so amazed at what I had just heard. And then I just thought about it every day, all day. It was on my mind all day for the next couple of weeks. And I just kept thinking, is it true or not? Like, this guy either died and met Jesus, who is God, or he's a liar. I mean, yeah. And then one day I was standing outside just looking up at the sky, thinking about this stuff. And I thought, oh my gosh, wait a second. I met this guy at the gym that had something so special about him. And he was unlike anybody else. He just had this goodness about him, and I liked it. I was just so drawn to it. And everything he said seemed to make really good sense. Then I read this book that doesn't just make good sense. It seems to make perfect sense, which is wild. And then I meet this total stranger who comes to my house to mow the lawn and says, God is telling me to talk to you about Jesus. Then I meet another total stranger at a wedding that says, God is telling me to talk to you about Jesus, and shares a story where he went to heaven and met Jesus, who is God. And I thought, oh my God, I know you now. You have made yourself known to me, the very one that I insisted you cannot know the truth about. I was a hard agnostic. I thought there could be a God. You cannot figure this stuff out. I mean, look around at planet Earth. We're all confused. I just thought there's no way. And I just kept saying over and over again, I know you now. You've made yourself known to me. And I had tears of joy, man. I had no conviction of sin. I didn't feel bad for being lost. I didn't feel bad for my behavior as an unbeliever. I just felt joy. But I also had this sense that the devil had been walking me around like a dog on a leash, and I didn't even know it. And that pissed me off. So instead of some like white knuckle attempt to stop sinning, it was like, I'm never freaking going back in that cave. You've had me living in a cave, and I'm in the light, and I'm like, you couldn't pay me enough to get back in that cave. And so it was kind of, when I say it was a radical conversion experience, when I started going to all my friends, like, hey man, like, I need to talk to you about Jesus. Like, we need to talk about the afterlife. They thought I was nuts.
You became that guy.
Yeah, they thought I was nuts. I remember talking to my butt. I had a friend that was a big time drug dealer. I mean, huge. I'm not talking small time. I'm talking like legit, like owning dance clubs, working with crime, like Vietnamese drug dealers at a big level, guys coming in the VIP room in suits once a week. I mean, I'm talking like legit crazy stuff, people getting killed. Yeah. I remember talking to him like, hey man, I need to talk to you. God's done something in my life. Are you still doing what you're doing? And I was just straight like, dude, you're going to end up in prison, man. Like, on a long enough timeline, you are going to get caught. We need to talk about your faith. We need to talk about your beliefs. Like, he thought I was nuts. So anyway, that's what happened. And then this is a really long story of getting into the Bible college thing. But after I got saved, I met a guy that was a donor, a very wealthy donor in Houston, who gave, 7 figures to multiple ministries. And we met at a fundraiser, and I got to open up for the fundraiser and share my testimony. And apologetics was a big part of it. And it was a fundraiser where Dr. Norman Geisler was the keynote speaker, who's my hero in apologetics. I mean, nobody has written better books on apologetics than Norman Geisler. So I got to speak, and this man comes up to me afterwards saying, I want to help you. And long story short, he offered to pay for my education with the caveat that I make a 3.5 GPA or above. This is somebody who's made nothing but D's and F's my entire life. And he said, we're going to write up a 1-page contract. If you keep a 3.5 GPA, I will pay tuition, books, some discretionary money, this and that and the other. He said, but if you go one semester and do not uphold a 3.5 GPA or above, I'm no longer obligated to pay for your education. So I graduated with a 3.98, which is another God story, because you take somebody who's been in special ed, who's been told, like I was going to small classes with kids with Down syndrome, with kids with all kinds of issues. And I just developed the idea after a while, you're one of the dumb kids. Like you're not like everybody else. Mm-hmm. And for God to do that, to graduating with highest honors, getting a 3.98, and then getting a presidential scholarship to go to Dallas Seminary, which is the highest scholarship they offer. That's a God story too, but I can look back and say, I didn't do any of it. I mean, that was just God providing that donor, God providing the conditions, God providing the focus. I mean, all of it is just a huge God story.
Oh man, that's an incredible story. There's a few things that stand out I want to dive a little deeper into. So, I know you had talked about the kind of the negative self-talk and having to really work to overcome that. Is that something that went away in kind of a miraculous way through your conversion, or is that something that you had to work at and process through?
No, I've had to work at it, man, because I think it affects you everywhere, right? If I'm married, I've got 3 little girls. The first few years of my marriage were really tough. I mean, you take somebody who hasn't grown up in the church like me, with the baggage, being the only male, being an alpha male. My dad wasn't around. I had 2 older sisters. Their dads weren't around. So when things went wrong, I had to deal with it. So developed some really dysfunctional ways of relating to people, to handling conflict. So first few years of marriage were rough, because my wife and I had polar opposite ways of handling conflict. And so we would get in a fight, and then she wouldn't talk to me. And you want to talk about negative self-talk. I mean, I would just go into a hole and start drowning, and oh my gosh, this is falling apart. Like she's never going to, are we going to be okay? All this anxiety, over the state of our relationship. But yeah, negative self-talk is a thing. I think you just have to, and by the way, now I love our marriage. Like we've been married for 12 years. She's my best friend. I don't just love her. I like her a lot. We love spending time together. Our marriage is wonderful. And God used our opposite ways of relating for good over the years and helped her realize areas that she wasn't being a peacemaker and being loving, helped me realize where I could relax and let go of control and be a peacemaker and be loving. And we love it now. But I think the negative self-talk thing, I think it's just something you kind of have to go through boot camp with through life. You have to practice. Like Paul said, the things you've seen and heard in me, practice these things. That's what he told the church. It takes practice. And so I think with negative self-talk, Craig Rochelle has a great book on this called Winning the War in Your Mind. And the book lines out a methodology where you practice. You take some of the top negative statements or fears that you're used to saying to yourself. First, you just got to write them down. You may not even know what they are. Get those down and then replace them with something else. So I have a few, people call them mantras, but I have a few things I say to myself each day. I say, you know what? God is good. He's working all things together for good in my life. My life is not randomly falling apart, because I experienced a lot of brokenness and dysfunction and lack of security. We were, never had enough money, all kinds of things. And you bring that into your adulthood. So that's one of the things I say. Joshua 1 is big to me. I say that almost daily. Lord, I just thank you that you're with me and you're never going to fail me. You're going to let me go through battles. You're not going to prevent the battles. The whole book of Joshua is nothing but battles. So why should I expect to just bypass any difficulty in my life? So difficulty is going to come. I welcome that, whatever you think is good, but I know you're with me in it. in ways that I don't understand. And I know you're not going to fail me, and you're not going to leave me, and you love me. So I say stuff like that to myself every day, man.
Yeah. That sounds like quite a journey. Do you have any advice for somebody else that's struggling with that negative self-talk or doubting whether they can do whatever's in front of them next?
Yeah, I think you need to assess what is it that you're believing? What is it that you're saying? A lot of people don't vocalize it. You need to talk to somebody about it and try to distill it down to a simple thing. Like, you can't just say, well, I struggle with fear. I struggle with anxiety. What are you afraid of? Okay. With me, I knew God had the power, but I didn't know he would come through. That's something I struggled with for years in my early Christianity. I know you're all powerful, but I also know you let some messed up stuff happen in life. Like, you do allow death. You do allow businesses to fail. You do allow this, whatever, any negative scenario. So I had to come to a point to where it was like, I know you love me, and you're going to be loving in my life, and I've got to trust that, But yeah, I think you need to vocalize it, and I think you need to replace it with a true statement that's faith. Because it's just fear or faith. I mean, it all comes down to fear or faith. And if the enemy can get you to be worried and be fearful and start questioning everything, I mean, he's really got you, and it just sucks the joy out of your life too. So yeah, I would encourage anybody that's dealing with that to write it down on paper, try to come up with a simple statement that's clear about what you fear or what that negative self-talk is. Whether it's about you or your relationships or your life or who God is. A lot of believers aren't mature enough to just be honest with God. Like, Lord, I'm really struggling with you right now. I think you suck because you've come through for other people, but you haven't, be honest with God. He already knows what's in your heart anyway.
Yeah.
That could be a turning point in your relationship right there.
Handle it. You're not going to hurt his feelings.
No, I mean, read the Psalms. Like, if you need help with that, just read the Psalms. It's the most raw form of communication with God. But yeah, I think writing it down and then replace it with a true statement and practice that. Say it to yourself every day. That's biblical, by the way. It's not just some new age stuff or something from some self-help, but like, that is biblical to talk to yourself. I read a quote years ago, because I got a leadership degree at the College of Biblical Studies. And one of the books we read, one phrase in the whole book stuck out to me. He said, the biggest problem with leaders today is that they listen to themselves instead of talking to themselves. Ooh, so whatever you wake up with in the morning, whatever that natural thought process is, stop. Okay, silence. Here's the truth that I'm going to tell myself. That takes practice, and that's normal.
Yeah. Oh man, that's good. I'm gonna write that one down. That's good. So I can tell kind of your faith and that background is a huge part of your story. I'm just fascinated. How do you go from a ministry track really big into apologetics and Bible school to starting your own business? What was the process that led you maybe away from full-time ministry and into ministry through business? Is that a fair way to word that?
Yeah, it was kind of a odd process because I love preaching and teaching, and I think that's just something that I've done consistently over the years in prisons and churches, and led a lot of Bible studies, taught a lot of Bible classes at different churches. And so when I moved to Dallas to go to Dallas Seminary, the Dallas Seminary, the lady that was head over development and fundraising for Dallas Seminary knew of me, and she had a donor he was an elder at a church in Frisco, Texas, and they were looking for a pastor, and she connected us, and I started preaching at their church and loved that and thought I'd be doing that for the rest of my life. But I never really wanted to be a full-time pastor. I just like preaching. Preaching's the easy part. Preaching's the easy part. Like, if you're called to do that, but it's all the other stuff that's the real work and the real sacrifice, I think. Preaching's the fun part.
Yeah.
And so I'm at Dallas Seminary, and I had gotten a job with a ministry called Point of View Ministries, and I was a fundraiser. And one of the donors that had cut us a good-sized check, we were just getting to know each other, having lunch, and I had just read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I had not been taught anything about money growing up. We just didn't know. We didn't know how to manage money. My mom didn't know how to manage money. That's not a hit against her. She was never taught that. And so when I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, it was almost like getting saved a second time. Like it was that dramatic to go to, holy smokes, I know nothing about money, and money's always been a problem. We grew up poor too. You can make money. You can have multiple income sources. You can build generational wealth, and you can use money as a tool. Money's not this big dark cloud now that just rains trouble on your life. You can actually use it as a tool to help people, to bless others, to bless your family. And so I just couldn't stop thinking about that. And I started praying and I said, God, I mean, this is life-changing. I want to be like the rich dad. I don't want to be like the poor dad. I would love to have multiple businesses, multiple streams of income, and have the freedom that comes with that, and the ability to do different things that I can't do if I don't have the money to do it, like help fund ministries or anything that requires money, right? If you don't have money, you can't do it. And so I meet this donor and we get to talking, and she goes, I think you need to meet these two guys that I know. They're Christian entrepreneurs. And I just think you need to meet them. And I didn't know it, but she was an investor in their startup. And so I meet these two guys. They were from Springfield, Missouri, and they had started this company. And long story short, I started my first foray into entrepreneurship with their company. And they had this, it totally failed, by the way, this business. But they had this restaurant app that you would buy. You download this app on your phone. There's a picture of my wife. And if a restaurant had the app, or if they worked with the app, you'd go into the restaurant, and the app was called Spin Streak, almost like Winning Streak, but Spin Streak. I mean, even the name wasn't good. Okay. And you'd spin this wheel and you'd win things like half off your order, or buy one, get one, or 20% off. Yeah. So it was a way for the restaurant to retain customers. So they're selling this thing as like a business in the box. Like you can be a franchisee or a dealer of this thing. You own a market and you go sell it, and you sell as many accounts as you want, and everything gets fulfilled at the back office, and they've got the marketing and the SOPs and all of it. So to me, that was a low risk way to be an entrepreneur. Like, this is a business in the box. Somebody else has already thought up this model. I just sell. So man, I mean, so I talked to this donor and I said, I'd like to become a dealer for this company, and I'd like to have the Dallas market or part of it, but I don't have the money for this. I'm a seminary student. Seminary students don't have money. They're too busy paying for seminary. And so she funded that and was like, look, I'll give you this as a loan. I'll pay for your dealership fee, get you started, and you pay it back. So I get started, and I'm going on lunch breaks from work. I'm going in restaurants, walking in. Is the owner here? I'd love to shake hands with the owner. And I'm telling him about how I can help him retain customers and get new ones. I'm going on Saturdays and walking in. Same thing. I mean, I'm just trying to do whatever it takes to make this thing work. And I'm thinking, if I could get up to 50 to 70 customers on monthly recurring revenue, this would be a big blessing to my family. So my wife was on board, and she's watching me leave on Saturdays and go do this. And after a few months, it just started to fall apart. They started having problems with the app, started having problems with other dealers not selling the app. There were glitches. Restaurants would use it for a few months and then want to cancel. It just became a huge headache. So then these guys pivoted, like entrepreneurs do, and they're like, all right, let's just kill the app. Like, it sucks. It's not going to be what we wanted it to be. But we figured out how to sell banner ads online. These things are, millions and millions and millions of dollars are spent on these every month. We're going to design banner ads. We're going to manage them. We're going to charge companies a fee. Now we can work with anybody, not just restaurants. So I started selling banner ads, and then they started to sell websites, and then they started to sell SEO services. And then they just became a full-blown digital marketing company. And I think at their peak, they had over 300 customers on monthly recurring revenue. And so they did okay. And that was okay for me as well. It never became like anything really big. But that gave me a taste of not only what does entrepreneurship look like, because I got to watch these guys grow this thing. I got to watch them deal with issues. I got to watch them make the pivot. But it also helped me realize, like, this isn't that hard. Like, these guys are not geniuses. They're just normal guys. And they came up with an idea, and they kind of built a plane while they were flying it. I mean, they didn't have the plane built and then they took off. They didn't know what they were doing. Like all they knew was what next step to take. And so that got me thinking too, like, man, I could start my own company, and that's kind of how all that started. And then we came to a point to where my wife and I were both getting master's degrees. And so I'm finishing my master's degree at Dallas Seminary. She was just starting a master's degree, a dual master's. And we had a conversation where we're dealing with the issue. The issue is, okay, if I graduate, we can't both afford to get our master's degrees. If I graduate, I get a degree and nothing changes. If she graduates, she gets a degree and gets a massive pay raise. So we're like, okay, let's put Dallas Seminary on hold. Let's let you finish your degree. And I just kept focusing on the world of entrepreneurship. She finished her degree and I just never went back to Dallas Seminary. And I only had 2 classes left to graduate.
Oh, man. Do you think you'll ever go back?
Probably not, man. It's like at this point, I've studied so much. The only reason I would go back is for a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And so, but also, just a mindset shift in that occurred as well, where you hear people say full-time ministry all the time, which is a phrase that's not in the Bible, but people say it all the time. They'll say, I was called to full-time ministry, or, oh, are you in full-time ministry? And so I started thinking through that, because I heard every day you go to chapel at Dallas Seminary, or every day you go to class at Dallas Seminary, you have to go to chapel. And I would hear professors say this, when I was called to full-time ministry. And I started to have a real problem with it, because anything I hear, I have to, wait a second, where is it in scripture? And so I started thinking, wait a second, we're all ambassadors for Christ, no matter what we do, whether you're a plumber or whether you're Billy Graham. We're all priests. We're all a royal priesthood, a kingdom. We're all new creatures. God's working through all of us. There's multiple gifts. There's multiple ministries. And so I developed the belief that we're all, if you're a Christian, you're in full-time ministry. Like, you don't clock out of your Christianity. You don't wake up and go to, while I'm at Starbucks, I'm not a Christian. But when I go to church, I'm a Christian. And so I look at business just as a ministry platform. Like, I'm a light to the 700 plus roofing company owners that are in our group. I'm open about my faith. Then when I get home, I have a ministry to my wife as her husband, to wash her with the water of the word, to encourage her in the Lord, to love her well. And then I've got a ministry to my 3 girls. I've got a ministry to my brothers in Christ I meet with on Friday mornings. And I pray every morning that, like Paul said in Romans 1, that we'd walk away mutually encouraged by one another's faith, both theirs and mine. So any relationship I have is ministry. It's a chance for Christ to shine through, as long as I'm, an open and willing vessel. So, and I get asked this, like, we went to a fundraiser and a guy had known me from Northwest Bible Church, where I preached for about a year. And he said, oh, are you still in full-time ministry? I was like, well, yeah, I'm a Christian, right? Like, I'm not checking out on my Christianity at any point today that I'm aware of. And he was like, oh, well, yeah. And it was awkward, but I'm like, stop throwing this phrase around.
That's great. Oh man, I love that. You've been an encouragement to me just this afternoon here. So, oh man. Okay, so you're almost finished seminary, 2 classes left. Start working on this restaurant app that turns into website banners. How do you get from selling websites to the roofing industry?
Yeah, so the digital marketing company got under new ownership. They brought some partners on board. It's kind of a sad story. The new partners they brought on board did kind of a hostile takeover of the company. They outlawyered the founders and took the company over, and they fired me right away. I was the highest paid employee at the company. They're like, he's gone. So that was catastrophic to me. We weren't ready for that financially. That was one of the lowest points I'd had in my life as a believer. I won't say what I was saying to God in my garage as I was yelling at God saying, where are you? What are you doing? Like, you knew this was coming. But God used that for good too. Really, really, really good. And so I ended up applying for a job, a guy I met through church, and it was in healthcare software sales. And I did that for 2 years, and God really used that for good, even though it was really hard. Battled a lot of negative self-talk with that, because that was a startup as well. So note to anyone listening to this, if you want stability, don't work for a startup. that was a startup as well. And I was in sales and they had sales goals and I just, I'd hit the goals and then not the next quarter. And it was just an emotional roller coaster. And so I got so sick of that I started looking for what else to get into. And a buddy of mine owned a roofing company and I reached out to him and I was like, man, I'm looking for something else to get into. I see you a couple of times a year at Christmas parties, this and that. You always seem really laid back and you're talking about how you're taking the month of December off and going hunting and this and that. Like, what does it look like to get into roofing? I would just like to talk to you about that. And long story short, I started selling roofs for him. And my brain just couldn't get away from the idea of, okay, well, what kind of business could we start in roofing other than selling roofs for him? And that's when we came up with the idea of the Limitless CEO groups.
Okay. And so that started as like a business coaching organization. It didn't start as the GPO. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. It was more of,
Okay.
Have you ever heard of EOS Worldwide?
No.
EOS is just a way to systemize your business. There's a book called Traction by Gino Wickman. It's one of the most boring books you'll ever read, but it's like a business manual on how to set your business up to where it's predictable, repeatable. You got the right people in the right seats. You got processes, you got scorecards, you got planning. It's just all there, a whole system for you. And so I became an implementer. I went through the coaching program and became an EOS implementer, and it's applicable to any business. And so we started teaching this to roofing owners. They got books, they got workbooks, and we did training calls every week. And then that's where and I actually had lunch with my former employer from the healthcare software company and told him I got into roofing. And his first response was, oh man, you should start a GPO. I'm like, I don't know about that, and I just could not shake that statement. And I kept thinking, man, what would that look like? And that's when we started asking our members if they'd ever heard of a GPO.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting. So how does that startup look? I can imagine that's got to be a pretty daunting task. You got the whole chicken and egg thing going on of, it's hard to get members until you have deals, and it's hard to get the deals until you have members. How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, it's impossible for one, it's a really hard business model to start. It's a great business model years down the road once you've been established, but it's one of the hardest businesses to start because there's no cash flow up front. And like you said, how do you build a group if you don't have any deals? And how do you get a deal if you don't have a group? Well, it just so happened, because God works through relationships, and God had all of this planned all along. I'm constantly surprised by the good things God has planned that they're not even on my radar. Like, it's stuff that I never dreamed about. So it just so happened that one of the guys in our Limitless CEO group had started a roofing supply company in Texas because he didn't like his local supplier and he thought, I can do it better. He's a really interesting guy from South Africa, solid Christian guy. All he does now is travel all over the world and dig water, fund water wells for his nonprofit. And he said, I started my supply company, and then I was approached by SRS Distribution, which is one of the big three suppliers in roofing. And he said, they acquired my business. And in the process, I got to know Dan Tinker, the CEO. And he said, I think this is a great idea. What if I just email Dan and let's just see what happens? And so he emailed Dan Tinker, the CEO of SRS, which just got acquired by Home Depot. And he emailed Dan. The email was perfect. It said, hey, Dan, this is Doss. His name's Doss Rousseau from South Africa. He said, hey, Dan, this is Doss. I'm in a group called Limitless with Dylan McCabe, and he has a business idea I think you need to hear about. Just completely left it vague, Yeah. And then Dan emailed back within 30 minutes. And he said, hey, I'm on vacation right now, but I'd love to meet with you guys. Why don't we plan something for August? And this was like, I think this was May at the time. And so I'm thinking, oh my gosh, like, we've got this idea. Now we've got to get an LLC formed. We got to get a website built. We got to get a real plan together here. And so that was some healthy pressure again, just like having to be forced to get a 3.5 GPA or above in college. Here was another pressure point where it's like, okay, put this business together. We hired a consultant right away that was in healthcare that I'd known, and she was head of a GPO in healthcare. We're like, okay, how do we do this? How do we get started? How does the financial structure look? How do we help members? How does the company profitable? We put the whole thing together. built a whole presentation, and I went to SRS's headquarters, which is in McKinney, Texas, and went to their big meeting room, and sitting at this massive, like 30 person conference room table. And right across from me is the CEO of SRS, who makes deals for a living. That's all he does.
Yeah.
And then their head of mergers and acquisitions, who does nothing but negotiate deals. And then their VP of sales, who does nothing but negotiate deals with the biggest roofing companies in the US. And so I'm completely outgunned, and it's me with zero experience. And then my friend Doss, my roofing owner friend, is just sitting there, and he's just quiet. He has nothing to say. Right.
Yeah.
And so I pitched them this idea, and they tried to poke 1,000 holes in my idea. But the thing God had done in my time in healthcare, after calling on physicians for 2 years, trying to sell them enterprise level software, that will train you to control a conversation and not allow people to take it over. Because some of the physicians I called on, not all, but some, were some of the most arrogant, difficult people to talk to I've ever met, because they've been to school longer than anyone else. They're making more money than anybody else in the room. And a lot of these physicians had very successful practices. So the ego was just out of control, but they didn't know business, right? They'd been clinically trained, and I've got a business solution for a reason. It streamlines, it brings efficiency, it saves physicians enormous amounts of money. So I would challenge them on that. And I learned how to say, I get that, but what about these 3 questions? Like, what are you doing here? How are you solving this problem? Who's accountable for that? Have you checked on this? And after a while, they're like, they realize I don't have a grip on my practice. And so that helped, because I remember the point in the meeting with those guys at SRS. I was like, look, everything you're saying is in the presentation. Let's go through it. Hold your questions till the end, and let's just figure out if this is a win-win. If it's not, fine. But let's not, we're kind of all over the map here. And so Dan Tinker was phenomenal. Like, as a CEO, he was like, let's look at it. He was just curious and interested, and he wasn't arrogant. He was easy to talk to. And so we went through the presentation, and then he started asking a lot of questions. Like, how would you roll this out? Who would this be for? Well, what if this scenario? What if that scenario? What are you going to do in this event? And he just kept going. And then at one point, we met for 2 hours. It was like a 2-hour episode of Shark Tank. At one point, he goes, oh, what would we need to do to launch by January? And I remember sitting in my seat going, oh my gosh, he's going for it. Yeah. And for the next 45 minutes, we talked about how to launch together. And I walked out of there and thought, oh my gosh, we just got a deal with a multi-billion-dollar roofing supplier. And we had to negotiate over the next few months and get a contract drafted and all that stuff. But that's how it happened. They took a chance knowing that we didn't have a group, but they saw the value in getting more market share and helping roofing companies more. And they said yes. And that was the first big domino that fell. And then we started getting deals with vendors for everything from general liability insurance to lead generation to anything a roofing company spends money on.
Wow. That's a pretty cool story. All the systems you guys put in place, you set the meeting in May, you got to be there in August, just whirlwind, figuring stuff out. How many of those systems, those ideas, those processes are still the way you do things today?
The biggest one, I'm more of the visionary type. There's a book called Rocket Fuel that gets into visionary versus integrator. And I remember reading the first chapter where it talks about the visionary. I'm like, man, this is like, you could just insert my name. I mean, I'm great at taking things from 0 to 3 out of 10 steps to completion. I'm terrible at steps 4 through 10. Like, do not give it to me. I will screw it up. I will frustrate you. And so the biggest thing that I practice is the visionary part, the ideas, what does this strategy look like at a big picture level for the next year, for the next 2, for the next 3. But I've got guys around me who are more integrators, who are in the nuts and bolts of how we get there. What does it look like on a weekly and monthly basis? More operations minded.
Okay. I just know a lot of businesses, when they get started up, man, it is a whirlwind of just putting everything together, and you have this great vision, and 6 months later, you might be successful, but nothing looks the way you thought it was going to look. So I was curious if that was the case, or if you guys kind of nailed it the first time.
No, that's totally been the case with us. I mean, we've had to pivot and evolve and change direction. And I mean, so much. When we first started the group, I thought, man, excuse me, the other GPOs that I was familiar with, the ones in healthcare, some of these buying groups are huge, thousands and thousands of members. And I thought, we're going to start this in roofing and we're going to have hundreds of members in the first month. We had zero. Like everybody we talked to was like, what is this? What's a GPO? I finally stopped using that phrase because nobody understood what it meant. What's the catch? Like, you're going to save me money, but like, how does this work? Are you a supplier? People were confused about whether we had a warehouse where we were selling roofing materials at a discount. That first year was rough, man. I mean, I think we got like 50 members or something the first year. And then we decided, okay, we've been charging for this thing, and we charge them and they get access to a mastermind group as well and all this stuff. And then we thought, we need to open this up for free. Like we're charging people for something they don't even understand. So we opened it up for free, and that helped. But really not until this last year, like not until 2025 did we really start to take off. And that's in our third year. So no, it has not been easy. God doesn't roll out the red carpet just because you have a good idea or just because he's leading you into something. You have to go through the same challenges everybody else does.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the questions I had on my list for you specifically. Hey, you've been through some tough stuff of growing up, the only male in a home with a single mom, and being labeled as learning disabilities and being fired. Now building a business. What keeps you going when things get tough? What helps you push through? And 3 years of grinding it out before you get the membership going and make things happen. What keeps you going?
Yeah, I mean, for me, the biggest thing is prayer. I mean, my relationship with God is the anchor, and I pray that I lean on prayer for everything, just because I read the word too. I mean, I read the word every morning while I eat breakfast, but my go-to for peace and for direction is prayer mainly. And I ask the Lord, is there something you want me to see about this? Is there anything you want me to believe about this situation? And any thoughts that come to my mind, and I don't hear an audible voice or anything, but if an impression comes to my mind or a thought, and sometimes like recently we've been dealing with something, a challenge with the business. And I'm like, what do you want me to see about this, God? And the Joshua chapter 1 just comes to my mind very clearly, And so I'm reading that, and it's like, you need to be strong. You need to be courageous. You need to walk by faith. And, but I felt a conviction when we started this, that it was something that would be big and meaningful. And that I just remember praying, God, if you give us a deal, like if we can just get a deal with the supplier, that'll be confirmation that you're doing something huge, because I have no right to get a deal with any supplier. I'm from the outside of the industry. Nobody knows who I am. And for me to sit across from the CEO of SRS Distribution and talk about how to work together is nuts. Like, to me, that's just insane. And so when that happened, I realized God is doing something, and he's not going to stop. I mean, he's not going to just go, okay, I got you a deal with SRS. Now I'm pulling back. Hope you guys figure it out. Mm-hmm. And I've just always had that thought, like, God has started something here and he's going to finish it. And yeah, there's ups and downs. And like any startup, it's like, you have to figure out how to manage cash flow. You have to figure out how to pay your employees. You figure out the hard way that you hired the wrong person. And then you're trying to find the right people, the right strategy, the right marketing. It's all hard. I mean, it's all just one giant challenge, one challenge after another. But I still have the conviction that he's doing something good. And we're finally, after 3 years, we're hitting the tipping point to where things are happening in the business to where we'll be way stronger next year. Financially, we'll have a lot more members. We'll have more options for the members. We've got over 700 companies in the group now. And so I'm glad. I mean, I'm glad we persevered, but it's taken 3.5 years.
Yeah.
You just can't give up, man. That's it. Like, it's that simple. You just can't quit.
What What has been the most difficult challenge you faced in the last 3 years? What was the one that you lost the most sleep over or came the closest to giving up?
I think the hardest thing we've been through is, we have these strategic relationships with our suppliers, and we've got SRS and QXO, and we got to, we have to make sure it's a win-win partnership every year. We have to walk through, okay, what does our structure look like? What can Limitless offer its members in the form of savings, things that reduce their overhead? How does Limitless make money? And how is it helpful to the supplier? And one year, the negotiations became pretty intense. And we kind of locked horns. I personally locked horns with somebody at SRS on the leadership team. And it looked like we may not be able to figure out how to work together. And I thought, man, I'm going to see this thing that I started, that I felt led to start, that God has done some big stuff in. It looks like this whole thing may just completely fall apart. And that was hard, man. That was really hard. But it worked out, and it became even better after that. And it's been better ever since. So, even when it seems like God is not there and is not helping, usually that's the time where he is doing stuff behind the scenes. You just gotta wait, because moves are happening on the chessboard that you don't understand because you're not a grandmaster chess player.
Yeah.
All you're looking at is, I just want to move this pawn forward. Why won't this pawn go forward? But I like chess. If you watch a grandmaster play chess and you don't know how to play chess, the moves they're making make no sense.
Yeah.
And so that was a big lesson too, just to realize, look, your security is not in a process. Your security is not in how well you handle something. Your security is in Jesus, and he's gonna get you through stuff.
Awesome. That's great. I love that answer. Well, I want to step back and take a break from kind of the normal questions here just for a second. We do a special segment. We try to do one each show, and have listeners write in and ask questions kind of specific to you and your expertise. So I've got 2 of these submitted by Frank. So the first one, if you weren't running Limitless, what would you be doing instead?
Man, I'd probably be doing some sort of men's ministry full time. Just taking guys on hikes, talking about life, talking about marriage, talking about faith, believers, unbelievers, just having conversations about God, hopefully in some beautiful place like Colorado or Montana.
Yeah. Awesome. That's a great answer. I like that. And then the other one, I know you're still kind of getting it figured out 3.5 years in, but if you had to start over from ground zero to try to build the business that you've built, where would you start and what would you do different?
Probably would have raised money, because a lot of startups raise money. And the reason they raise money is because, again, money is a tool. And if you don't have that tool, you can't, if you want to dig a trench, it's way easier with a shovel. Well, you got to buy that shovel at a store. If you want to make it even easier to dig a trench, you need to pay somebody to use some heavy equipment like a backhoe or whatever to dig the trench even faster. That takes more money. So we did it the hard way. We didn't have a shovel. We didn't have anything. We just bootstrapped this thing. And I think it would have been way easier if we would have just given up some equity and raised some money and had some runway financially to hire people, spend money on marketing, stuff like that. I think in the next thing that I do, I'll probably do that. I mean, I'll either fund it myself somehow or raise money. I don't want to be in a situation where I'm bootstrapping a company with no money. That's the hard way.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. Well, the whole GPO thing is new to me as a contractor. I think talking with you is kind of the first time I've been introduced to that. So, can you give us a little bit of an overview? What is the advantage of a GPO to a supplier? And then how in the world are you giving this away for free? How do you set that up so that the contractor isn't paying for it?
Yeah. So the suppliers, they need the same thing every business needs. They need customers, and they need to keep those customers. So a group like ours with over 700 companies, they have an opportunity to work with our group and to gain market share in our group. And so we have a relationship with our members. We're constantly giving them trainings and resources and stuff like that. And we're giving them discounts on all kinds of things. So the suppliers get in there, are in our group to be a blessing to our members, to help our members and offer them, exclusive things through Limitless. To the roofing contractor, it just makes you more profitable because you've got overhead. You're paying for accounting, you're paying for shingles, you're paying for marketing and lead gen. You're paying for all kinds of things, and we can reduce your cost of business on all of those things. And so if we can reduce your cost of business on all the things you're spending money on, that makes your net profit stronger. It makes every job more profitable. So we basically just make more profitable roofing companies. And it's almost like a Costco membership. You join, you save, it's that simple. But the difference between us and Costco is we're not a warehouse. You're not buying from us. It's more like you get the perks of the membership, but you keep everything the same on your end. You still buy from your supplier the same way. You still have your same sales reps. All of that stays the same. It's just you get to go in and say, I'm a Limitless member, and you automatically get certain things that you wouldn't normally get.
Okay. Cool.
I think it's more like AAA. I haven't looked into AAA, but apparently that's what AAA is like. You join AAA and you just get discounts on all kinds of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. And so are you guys primarily focused on material and product, or are you doing, software and accounting and that kind of stuff as well?
Yep. All that stuff. Anything that a roofing company spends money on, we can reduce their cost of business. And not just with any vendors either. I mean, we've tried to really pick some of the best vendors in the industry. Like our bookkeeping / accounting vendor is, I would be really surprised if somebody could be more helpful than him, offer more value, and be more of a thought partner than him. He's got a company called One for the Books, and he's amazing. He's our fractional CFO. He does financial strategy and planning with us, and he just does not drop balls ever. So he's a unicorn. I mean, his strengths are so unusual with this stuff. So we want our members to work with him, like get a grip on your books, your cash flow management, your financial strategy, your job costing, all of it. So that's the goal, we want to save you money, but we also want to connect you with the right partners.
Through your whole leadership journey and entrepreneurial journey, what is something that you wish you would have learned earlier that would have maybe changed how things went for you?
I think relationships is everything. And so I think that the more that you can focus on the health of your relationships, the better. The more you can focus on helping others, serving others, being a blessing to them, the better. If you start something and you're reaching out to people and saying, hey, I have this new thing I want you to check out, you've already lost. That's like, help me. I need you to help me. Versus a relationship, a shift in relationship, which is like a servant leader mindset. I'm here to help you. I'm here to do whatever I can to elevate your situation, whether it benefits me or not. That's a heart issue, but that changes your relationships. And the cool thing about it is when you start navigating your relationships like that, you're going to get more help. You're going to get more customers. You're going to get more partnerships or whatever it is, your advancement of your mission. And so I wish I had I've read books on that, but I wish I'd really made that the purpose early on, because the challenge when you're in a startup, you have to make money. Mm-hmm. And you have to, you can't not make money. So every interaction you have, if I've got something that costs, $3,000 a year to sell, and I'm at a roofing conference at a booth and you stop by my booth, I want you to buy my product. So you have to almost put that aside and say, okay, I want you to buy my product, but I don't care if you do or not. How can I help you? Maybe my product's not perfect for you, but I want to learn about you. I want to find out what your challenges are. And maybe there's another vendor here at the conference that I need to connect you with, because that's really the dominant priority for you right now. And so when you have that mindset that you're just here to help other people, you're going to do way better. Your relationships are going to be better. but you've got to let go. And if you're a Christian, you should be able to do that. You should be able to say, look, Lord, you're my provider. I want to be a blessing to others. I'm going to leave whatever comes my way. I'm going to leave that up to you, but I want to help others. I want to serve others, and I'm going to trust you to provide for me. And it really frees you up.
Yeah. Oh man, that's great. I think we can definitely see that in our business as well. Is sometimes the best answer is, I'm not able to help you, but let me point you towards somebody that can. Or, yeah, we've even turned down new jobs because we find a cheaper way to do it than what the customer wanted. And hey, we can solve your problem, and you don't have to pay us to do it. We're just going to help you out. So that's great.
No kidding.
Oh, this is one I love. It's interesting to me. There's a few things that's been true for me. Is there something significant that through leadership and business and building a business from the ground startup without the capital you wish you would have had to kind of building it into a success, is there something that you've changed perspective on how you look at it, or have seen something from the other side that has really changed your mind about something?
Yeah. It comes back to who you decide to team up with. If you're going to run a triathlon and you want to get ready for it and you've never run a triathlon before, which is a huge undertaking. I've never run a triathlon. I'm never going to. I'm not a runner. I like to lift weights. I like to lift a heavy sandbag around. I love throwing weight around, but I'm not a runner. I'm 6'4", 245. My body is not built for running. I run like a 12-minute mile. But if I were going to run a triathlon, I would go talk to successful triathletes. I'd go talk to guys with an Ironman tattoo on their calf. I wouldn't talk to my buddy who's a gamer who sits on his couch and is 50 pounds overweight, drinking a Coke every night. But people do that in business. Like, you surround yourself with people who are not qualified to do whatever you need them to do with excellence, to just crush it. And so that would be my challenge to anybody. The lesson I've learned the hard way is, if you're going to do a business, whether it's people you hire or people you partner with, which is a huge commitment to be a business partner with somebody, make sure that you know their strengths. Make sure that they are going to be excellent at that thing. Make sure that it's not just out of convenience or because they're your friend or whatever. You need to make sure that that person is uniquely gifted and wired to do the thing you need them to do, because the right person makes all the difference and the wrong person makes all the difference. And when you get rid of that wrong person, you're going to be freed up so much. And when you bring in the right person to do a job or to team up with you in some way, whether it's a ministry or a business or whatever, it's a game changer. There's a really good book on that too, by Dr. Ben Hardy, called Who, Not How. Who, not how. Because everybody tries to think, well, how am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? I'm in residential roofing. I want to scale into commercial. How? It's not a how question. It's a who question. You need to find the right who, the person who's already done it, is comfortable with it, can do it in their sleep, and ask them to come team up with you and let them run with that. Right? So don't talk to overweight gamers about how to be a triathlete, and don't talk to people who don't know what they're doing, haven't done it before, about how to do something. Team up with the right people that are going to thrive with a proven track record. And that last phrase is critical, with a proven track record. That's one of the biggest lessons I've learned in the last 4 years.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that talk a big game, and having a track record behind them makes a difference. So,
yeah,
especially in today's world, is social media, and you can put out whatever front or whatever face you want, but unless you've got something behind it, it doesn't mean much. So,
yeah.
Awesome. I think maybe I know the answer to this, but did you have a major turning point, kind of a big point where you're grinding, you're pushing, you're fighting and building this business, and it's like, oh, we made it. We kind of got over a hurdle. We got the rock to the top of the hill sort of thing, where you started to build some momentum. And then when was that?
I mean, that's just been happening this year, really. We got We streamlined our processes. We made it way easier for a roofing company to join our group. I didn't realize it, but we were just kind of making it hard. We were adding a lot of steps to the process. We made that easier. We got some marketing dialed in on Facebook. That's been huge. And we brought a new partner on board, and that's been game changer. So yeah, just having the right person on your team and getting some systems dialed in. But we're just now experiencing that. It's just now feeling like some relief is coming after 3.5 years.
Okay. Well, I hope it continues to grow and take off for you. I know part of your story was, you lost your job at one point in time because of bringing in some partners and kind of a takeover in a business. And now you're running a business with partners. You spoke a little bit about making sure you have the right people and the right skills, but somebody that's starting up a business with a business partner, what advice do you have to put the right structures in place, make sure you have the right people to make sure you have a good fit?
Yeah, I probably would just say it's a little, if you ask people, should I partner with one of my friends? Half the people you talk to are like, do not ever partner with friends or family. And then you're going to talk to the other half and they're going to say, man, I partnered with one of my friends and it was the best thing ever. So I think it just takes a lot of prayer, but I would say whoever you partner with, whether it's a close friend or whatever, you need to have a partnership agreement that clearly outlines responsibility, accountability, what each partner brings to the table, and some stipulations in there where it's like, okay, well, what if you start in the business and a year or two later you decide you don't really want to do it anymore and you still own 50% of the company? Well, depending on how your partnership agreement is written, you may not be able to, that other partner may be able to go do something else and start another company or work for somebody else. And you're kind of saddled with the entire weight of the company all on your own, operating on an island, and there's nothing you can do. So make sure you've got a great attorney. The devil's in the details. So make sure you've got a partnership agreement that outlines where there's stipulations and accountability and consequences if somebody, basically breaches that contract agreement, that partnership agreement, whether it's through a character issue or a commitment issue or whatever it might be. You got to be smart about this stuff, man. You got to pay a good attorney and you got to pay them well.
Okay. That's some great advice. That's, I've always been afraid of ever bringing on a partner or doing partnership because I've seen it go poorly. So it was encouraging to hear you open to the idea and welcome it even after having suffered the hands of it. So, yeah. Well, my favorite question, man, we dove a lot into your background and your faith. I know this is a big part of it, but you're obviously a man of faith, and that's an important thing to you. Could you speak specifically to maybe how that has affected you as a leader and how you've shaped your business, shaped relationships with employees? What does that look like kind of in the office? And, how does your faith play out as a leader in your business?
Yeah, it's made a big difference on my relationships. And I keep going back to that word, but as an unbeliever, I did not have healthy relationships. I had a small circle of friends, couldn't maintain a healthy romantic relationship. I had a different girlfriend every 3 or 4 months. I just didn't know how to get along with people. And it was also really arrogant. Spent a lot of time in the gym and thought that I was, Mr. Tough Guy, and just had a real ego problem. And so when I got saved, God started bringing people into my life. Thank God, started bringing people around me to mentor me and disciple me, to help me realize, hey man, you need to chill out. Like, you're not more important than everybody here. The opinions you have are not more important. You need to learn some humility. You need to learn how to be quick to, slow to speak, slow to anger, quick to listen. You need to be a good listener and take a genuine interest in other people and get to know people. Like, when you're around people, are you even asking them about themselves and what they're up to and what they're interested in, what they're struggling? Are you taking any time to get to know them at all? And I wasn't. I got saved and went straight into teacher mode, and you were there for me to tell stuff. And that's just such a lopsided way to live. It's so warped. And so God really changed that. And that's really the biggest thing that God did in my life at Dallas Seminary. I really don't think I went to Dallas Seminary to learn more theology. I went to a great Bible college, learned a ton, and even had to read some of the same books at Dallas Seminary. Don't get me wrong, Dallas Seminary is way more intense. It's way more work, but it's another God story that I got. I moved to Dallas Seminary purely on faith. I didn't have any money to pay for seminary. I didn't have any way to pay for rent. And I tried to apply for all these different jobs. The only job I got was a security type position at a church where it was for students, really. You just sit at a desk and read and get paid for it. And that was like 15, 20 hours a week max. But I felt led to go to Dallas Seminary. And every time I prayed about it, I would just get the thought, just go. And I felt like I was losing my mind. Because I'm like, God, this doesn't make any sense. I don't have any money for school. Every time I talk to somebody about it, and the conversation goes to, how are you going to pay for that? And I got so tired of saying, I don't know. I just tried to avoid the topic. And so I drive to Dallas Seminary on faith. I do not have enough money for the first month's tuition. On the way to Dallas Seminary from Houston to Dallas, my truck breaks down on the side of the road with steam coming out of the hood, and the engine had blown. And I remember standing on the side of the road saying, okay, God, like, I've either run way ahead of you, I'm outside of your will, and this is a huge mistake because nothing's going right. I haven't been able to get any job I wanted. I haven't been able to secure any money. And now my truck is broken down on the side of the road. Or this is one of the biggest tests of my Christian faith that I've ever had. And so I got up to Dallas Seminary. I had some buddies come pick me up and take me up there. I sold my truck for like $3,000. It was useless. It was just for parts. And I got up to Dallas Seminary, and the job came up for apartment manager. And I applied for the job, and through God's providence, got the job, even though I've never managed an apartment building before, and they never gave that job to a first semester student before. And overnight, I went from struggling daily. I was praying daily. God, how am I going to buy groceries? God, it was so stressful, man. It was rough. Overnight, I went from not having enough money to having free tuition because I was full-time at Dallas Seminary as an employee. Free rent because I was apartment manager. I had my own apartment, and a salary. Everything, the entire burden was lifted away all at once. And I just remember thinking, wow, God, you had this plan the whole time. And I was so stressed out. And then the way God used that is he didn't just help me financially. When it's your job to interact with 400 other people on a daily basis who all know you by name, other seminary students, I moved to Dallas as a kind of a Pharisee. I thought I knew more than anybody else. I thought I was holier than anybody else. I thought I was doing more ministry than anybody else. I mean, I was really unteachable, arrogant, intense, hard to be around. And one by one, I would interact with these other residents, and God would be like, I would just have this thought like, man, look at that guy. He's so different than you. And look at how God worked in his life. Look at how God's using him. Oh, look at her. Look at her, the way she got saved and her story. And look at this guy from, the Bahamas, and look at this guy from India, and look at this guy from that, played football in college. And I mean, just one after the next, God was like, look at the diversity in my body, man. None of these people are like you. And I love them all. And they're all being used by me in different ways. And you've got this cookie cutter way you think it looks to be faithful to me. And it's so flawed. And I had to spend hours and hours and hours with all these residents. And I knew it was an issue. So I was praying a lot about it. I was praying, God, please teach me how to love people well, because I don't know how to do that. And God really used my time at Dallas Seminary to where by the time I was done, I actually loved being around people and had a genuine interest in people, like really enjoyed getting to know them. And that was a foreign experience to me, like prior to being at Dallas Seminary and God doing that work. So that's the biggest way he's changed my life is enabling me to love people and take a genuine interest in people and be humble too. Like there's no boasting.
Yeah.
There's no superiority, and there's no need to prove yourself. Like that's such a thing of the world, to be able to show yourself as more impressive in one way or another.
Yeah. Oh man, that's great. Thank you. I appreciate that. So this has been awesome. I love hearing about your business and your journey. We have one classic segment. I know you're not a trades practitioner, but we still got to ask the cordless tool debate. If you got to grab a cordless tool, what brand are you reaching for?
Man, I mean, Milwaukee's great, but I'm a woodworker. And so if you want to talk track saws and you want to talk diversity among tools, I mean, I think it's really hard to beat Makita, man. Their whole setup. I mean, they've just got an incredible lineup of tools. So I'm a big Makita fan.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. And this really has been a pleasure for me. I've enjoyed chatting with you and hearing your story. And it's really encouraged me and given me a lot to think about in some ways that I can grow as a leader and a man of God. And man, I just really appreciate your time and thank you for joining us. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, man. Really enjoyed it.
Awesome. We have a great day, and thank you guys for joining us here at the From the Ground Up show. If you want to join us on a future show, if you have a question you want to ask of an expert or a practitioner of the trades, please write in. You can find us on social media or on our website, and we'll see you with the next one. Thanks, Dylan.
Thanks a lot.